Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, it's the post-game podcast. The Timberwolves have lost their third straight, falling to the shorthanded Golden State Warriors on Sunday evening at Golden State. This is a game the Wolves led by double figures. What happened late in this one? We'll break down the late game failures on both ends of the floor, especially on the glass. Also, Naz Reid's career high 30 points. It's all upcoming on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Happy Monday, everybody. Hopefully you had a fantastic weekend. This is the post-game podcast. The Timberwolves lost the Warriors on Sunday, so we'll break down what happened, especially late game. We'll break down that last sequence where the Timberwolves had a chance to tie the game and could not. I'll give my take on the no timeout and all that stuff here in just a minute. First of all, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, Locked On Wolves is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also, of course, watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app. That's on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. More great local sports coverage 24/7, and it's free. Download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app today on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can also, of course, follow the show on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with two B's, two E's, CKEN. All right, there's no two ways to put this. I mean, the Timberwolves have lost three straight games they should have won. Going into the All-Star break, losing at home to the Wizards, coming out of the break, losing at home to the Hornets, and now losing to a Steph Curry-less, Draymond Green-less, Andrew Wiggins-less Golden State Warriors team. Yes, Golden State's great at home, and yes, they're a 500 team. It's not like they're awful, but this is a game that was right there for Minnesota. They led by 10 with 8 minutes to play, and again, even though the Wolves were shorthanded, I mean, the players the Wolves had on the floor in this game, I mean, Ant should have been the best player on the floor. He most certainly was not in this game. We'll talk more about that. But just really disheartening. And I don't think it was necessarily effort as much. It was the Charlotte game certainly was effort on Friday. That loss was. This game, I didn't really feel that way. They came out, they looked like they're ready to play aggressive offensively, or on both ends of the floor, really early in the game. A couple nice blocks at the rim. Ant, Naz, Jaden McDaniels, they were all active defensively. I don't think that was the issue in this game. This was more simply kind of losing their way. A combination of Ant having a really poor offensive game in this one, and nobody else besides Naz Reid really coming to the party at all offensively. And of course, no Rudy Gobert. He missed the game due to illness. So late game execution, and neither team was good. Like late in the game, Golden State tried really hard not to win this game, and Minnesota did not oblige and just handed it right back to them. So let's start there. Let's start with the late game execution and what happened down the stretch, and then I want to back up and talk about a couple things that went well, a couple things that didn't. We will do individual studs and duds because I think there were some clear lines in this one who played well and who didn't for Minnesota. It's not always the case, that individually at least. And that was, I thought it was, there's a pretty clear line there in this one. So setting the stage, the Timberwolves late in this game, they were winning it by 9 going to the fourth quarter. The Timberwolves still managed to have a 10-point lead in this one with 8 to play. I think that's what I had here. Yeah, up 10 with 8 minutes to play. And then the Warriors go on this run and tie the game with 4 minutes to play. So 8 minutes to play, up 10, lead's gone in 4 minutes. So what happened? Well, I'll just give you a sampling of the possessions in there. So after Rivers makes the three-pointer with 8:20 to play, the Warriors call a timeout. They come out, they get a three from Dante DiVincenzo, but Kyle Anderson scores on the other end of the floor. So now it's still a 9-point game. And then Golden State comes back and scores. Then the Timberwolves on their next 3 possessions, it goes Austin Rivers, missed three-pointer. Actually, 2 Austin Rivers three-pointer, missed three-pointer. Another Austin Rivers missed three-pointer. A Naz Reid missed three-pointer, which, if I recall correctly, that was not a great shot. It was a few feet beyond the arc. Like, it just wasn't a great shot from Naz. And then Austin Rivers misses 2 free throws. Now, at this point, it's a 2-point game because the Warriors are scoring every time down. They're just forcing the ball to Klay Thompson. And Jaden McDaniels was back on the floor at this point too. And they were just doing everything they could, the Warriors were, to get the ball into Klay Thompson's hands. And the Warriors ended up tying the game on an Anthony Lamb three-pointer. Well, actually, they tied it on a DiVincenzo shot. Kyle Anderson makes a three-point play on the other end, and then they retied on an Anthony Lamb three. It's a tie game with 4 minutes to play, just like that. The biggest issue was the stagnant offense for Minnesota. And stop me if you've heard this before. Oh, wait, if you listen to Friday's postcast, that I did with Marnie Geldner from Bally Sports North, we did the postgame pod and talked about the stagnant offense, the disjointed offense on Friday, because they got some offense. Like the Charlotte game, the Wolves scored. It just was weird. Like the first half they did. The second half they didn't. And in this game, it was really only the first quarter. And the third quarter was pretty good too, and we'll talk about that. But in the second and fourth quarters, the offense was completely stale and stagnant. They ended up just playing 5 out a lot, which, of course, you don't do when Rudy Gobert's on the floor. And that has been an issue at times, lack of spacing, et cetera. But all this space doesn't do you any good if you can't win off the dribble. And they did in the third quarter. I mean, you go back and rewatch the third quarter, and Kyle Anderson was winning off the dribble. Mike Conley was winning off the dribble. Anthony Edwards was winning off the dribble. They're getting driving kick threes, open threes, and making the threes. Fourth quarter in this game, it was either pass the ball around the perimeter until you're forced into a drive and you don't get a good shot, get the ball to Ant, who gets loaded up on, and then he passes it around and you miss an open three. Those were kind of essentially what the offense was in the fourth quarter. They were barely running anything. Occasionally they ran a horn set, and it ended up turning into basically just a pick and roll and ended in a missed three in a lot of cases. The Wolves just could not make shots in the fourth quarter, and Ant could not get going all game long. We'll talk more about that. But stagnant offense, lack of execution offensively, and I mean, those were the biggest issues. So, which related, let me hold that thought, right? Hold that point of the lack of offensive execution for the Wolves, because that's important for my next point. So the Wolves are actually down 8 with like a minute to play in this game. Yeah, they're down 8 with 101 left. But Anthony Edwards hits a three. Now it's a 5-point game. The Warriors turn it over. Ant misses a three. Warriors turn it over again after a timeout, actually. After an inbound play. Turn it over again. Kyle Anderson makes a dunk. It's now a 3-point game. The Warriors turn it over again. Mike Conley steals it off the inbounds. Now you've got a broken floor situation with roughly 18 seconds to play after Conley gets the steal. Broken floor situation, down 3 with under 20 seconds to play. You could call timeout. You wouldn't hold for the final shot because you're down 3, right? It's not a tie game. So you could call timeout to reset the offense. But what's the point I just made? The Wolves could not execute offensively. Out of timeouts, usually the Wolves are decent out of timeouts. They were not good out of timeouts in this game. Why would calling timeout and resetting your offense, allowing the defense to reset and load up on Ant inevitably, like who else is going to beat the Warriors in the half court besides Anthony Edwards? Naz Reid was doing it, sure, but are you going to put the ball in Naz Reid's hand and tell him ISO from the perimeter, figure it out? You're not going to post him up down 3 with 18 seconds. So what's your sideline on a bounce play? What's your ATO if you call timeout there? And I'm saying this to the Twitter straw man that it's not a straw man because it's out there. Like the argument of like, oh, Finch should have called timeout. I would not have called timeout there either. Because what you're doing is you're letting the Warriors set their defense. They haven't been great defensively this year, but Steve Kerr's a good coach. Like he'd have them ready for whatever it is the Wolves would try and do. Load up on Ant, make somebody else beat you. I mean, if you're the Warriors, you're not too scared with Kyle Anderson shooting a semi-contested 3 to tie the game. Or, there's no Taurean Prince. Like who's shooting your 3? It's Anthony Edwards, maybe Naz. Like that's it. Maybe Jaden McDaniels, I guess. But what did they get in that broken floor situation in transition when the Warriors defense wasn't set? Well, Jaden could have pulled up from 3 from the right wing. He could have kicked it to Anthony Edwards in the corner. He probably would have been open for that 3. He kicked it to Conley, swung it to the left side. Instead, Conley was semi-open, passed it to Jordan McLaughlin in the left corner for the most open shot. McLaughlin just misses the shot short. Yeah, he's a bad 3-point shooter so far this year. He's been better in his career. He's also better from the corners. But you had basically 3 open attempts, potentially 4 if you swing it to the other corner against a non-set defense. What are you hoping for out of an ATO there? You're down 3. You're not down 2. So you can't just tell Ant to go to the basket and hope for the best. I mean, I guess you could do that. and then play the foul game, but then you're out of timeouts because you just use your last timeout to set the play up. So what are you calling there? You're not going to do better than a possible open three from McDaniels, a possible open three from Mike Conley, and an open three from Jordan McLaughlin. There's no Karl-Anthony Towns. There's no, Rudy Gobert doesn't help you there anyway. There's no Taurean Prince, who's, one of the team's best three-point shooters this year. There's no D'Angelo Russell. So what are you calling a timeout to do? That I think not calling a timeout there was the best move, because the other thing is they still had another chance, right? After missing that shot, Golden State calls a timeout. They inbound the ball at half court. McLaughlin forces a jump ball. And if he gets the steal there, I mean, you've got another open floor situation, but at that point it was more balanced because everyone was kind of in the center of the floor. They wouldn't have really had numbers, so they probably do call timeout. Or what if you win the jump ball with 6 seconds left, or how much was left when they got the jump ball? Let's see. I want to get the exact time right. When they did the center court jump ball, it was like 6 seconds, 8.1 seconds, something like that. And 5 seconds left. So if McLaughlin wins that jump ball with 5 seconds left, guess what? You have a timeout still because you didn't use it earlier. So I completely on board with Chris Finch not calling timeout in that situation. I think he made the right decision. It just obviously did not work out. They missed the three. All right, I want to talk about a couple other things the Wolves really struggle with this game, and then a couple of small, I guess, silver linings, if we want to call it that, before we get to individual studs and duds. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Prize Picks. If you'd taken Naz Reid points over this game, you'd have been in great shape. Naz had a career-high 30 points. Whatever his over-under was, it would have been too low for this one. If you're wondering how Prize Picks works, I'll tell you. It's really easy. You just pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry, and you're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. They offer projections on any sport that you watch. Of course, that includes the NBA, but also the MLB, which just kicked off with spring training this weekend, the NHL, which is ongoing, college basketball, you name it, they've got it. Make your entry in less than 60 seconds. It really is that easy. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right. Late game execution, not great for Minnesota. I don't fault Chris Finch for what he did late in the game. I do fault the Timberwolves for failing to execute. And obviously then, of course, that does fall in part on the head coach. And there's a lot more there. That's a loaded conversation. But late in this one, it was more just simply execution. Other things throughout this game that were issues. Let's start there. Then we'll close this segment with a couple of positives. Biggest issues for me outside of the late game execution, I would say, was rebounding. Also an issue late in the fourth quarter, or throughout the fourth quarter, throughout the game. The Timberwolves were a minus 13 in rebounding in this game. They gave up 16 offensive rebounds to Golden State Warriors, including 7 to Kevon Looney. The Timberwolves got more from Luka Garza on the glass in his 4-minute stint in the second quarter than they did for really anybody else in terms of rebounds per minute. Just Minnesota really, really struggled on the glass in this game. It's been a little while since we've really blamed that for a significant, playing a significant role in a loss, but that was a problem in this one. And Golden State, they're not a big, and we talked about this the last time. Rudy Gobert has played well against Golden State last time out. Look at their starting lineup. Kevon Looney and Jonathan Kuminga are their bigs. Off the bench, I mean, it's like Anthony Lamb. I mean, they don't have a big lineup, which works for Naz Reid, right? He ate them alive for especially the first half, but most of the game. But on the glass, the activity of Luka Garza was the only thing for those 4 minutes that the Wolves had. Nobody else. Naz had 9 rebounds, but he played 36 minutes. Kyle Anderson had 9 rebounds in 30 minutes. Nobody else on the team had more than 5 rebounds for the Timberwolves. They were out-rebounded by 13. Second chance points were a big issue as Golden State kind of mounted that comeback in the fourth quarter. And it really early, too, as Golden State mounted their first comeback, late first, early second quarter, to get back into the game after Minnesota had pulled out to an early lead. The other issue for Minnesota was 2-point shooting. and specifically points to the paint. The Timberwolves actually made 2 more three-pointers in this game than Golden State. Golden State, the big bad, number 1 in three-point attempts per game, number 1 in three-point makes per game. Yeah, no Steph Curry, I get it. But still, Golden State was only 36% from 3, 15 of 42. The Wolves were 17 of 45, 37.8%, 2 points better, 2 percentage points better, 2 more made threes, 2 made threes more than Golden State. The biggest problem, though, is Minnesota was just 42.2% overall from the field. They were under 50% for the paint. By my count, this isn't official, but by my count, they were 16 of 33 in the paint. That's 48.4%. You can't shoot 48% in the paint and expect to win, even if you're shooting 38. If you shoot 48% in the paint, you better shoot 45% from 3 if you expect to win. Compounding issues, the Timberwolves were 52.4% at the free throw line, 11 of 21. So they were a shade above 50% at the free throw line, a shade below 50% in the paint. Neither one of those numbers is good. And it pretty much cancels out whatever advantage you thought you had from outside the arc. You just can't leave points at the free throw line, that many points at the free throw line. And Golden State missed 6 there as well, but the Wolves missed 10. Golden State didn't shoot the ball great overall either, but they also had more opportunities, more second chance opportunities, and simply executed their offense better, even though they had those really sloppy late game turnovers. When they were running plays for Klay Thompson, they were running plays for Klay Thompson. They were getting looks. And then the shot making in those big moments was simply better from Golden State. So late game execution, second chance points for Golden State, and scoring in the paint / free throws were the biggest issues for Minnesota in this game. A couple of positives. Well, early in the game, the Wolves were active. Go back and watch the first few minutes of the game. The Wolves had a couple nice rim contests. I believe both Naz and McDaniels had blocks at the rim, maybe even Ant too, early in this game. Really good activity defensively, good rim defense. They built the double-digit lead early in the game. And then turnovers, on the flip side of that, the turnovers is what let Golden State back into it. I think it was 5 turnovers on 7 possessions. It was kind of right when the bench started coming into the game, late first, early second quarter. Some really bad turnovers. Bad stretch from Jordan McLaughlin. Just in general, not good execution. And that was why the first lead went away, was the turnovers. Late in the game, it wasn't as much turnovers. It was shot selection, lack of shot making, and execution, and then second chance points and good execution in the half court from Golden State. Another positive for Minnesota, the third quarter. Like, that was such a bugaboo for this team early in the season, for much of the season. The third quarter was really good in this one. This was a tie game at halftime, I believe. Tie game at halftime. Is that right? They were up 9 at the end of the first, and I guess they were down 2 at halftime. Golden State was up 2 at halftime. But the Wolves were a plus 11 in the third quarter in this game. And really, it's because the offense, even if it was a little clunky, like it was really simple, but it worked. It was a lot of dribble drive, penetration, beating your guy one-on-one, kick out. Anthony Edwards had a couple of nice assists. This was not a good game for Ant, but he had a couple of nice drives and kicks, drives and assists, a dump off to Naz for a dunk. Mike Conley had some nice drives in the third quarter. Kyle Anderson, even Naz got into the passing game. They knocked down open threes. Jaden McDaniels hit a big 3. Austin Rivers, like the 3-point shooting, the driving kick game was very strong in the third quarter. They were beating Golden State off the dribble. Good passing, good shot making, good shooting from deep. And then all of a sudden it all went away in the fourth quarter. They weren't getting those looks. And when they did get looks, they rushed them, they missed them. It's everything we already talked about. So only the positives are the start to this game, also the third quarter. Usually this season, the fourth quarter has been better than the third. That was not the case in this one. They've got to be better rebounding the ball. They've got to be better offensive execution. In general, I don't think the defense was all that bad for Minnesota. I thought Jaden McDaniels was pretty good on Klay Thompson when he was matched up against him. I don't really have a problem with that. I know he scored 32 on 23 shots, but thought he was good. DiVincenzo made some tough shots in this game too. Jordan Poole had a rough night. Like, I thought defensively, the Timberwolves were fine. The issue is the offensive execution, lack of consistency there, and then also those second chance points. And then, of course, late game, everything we already talked about. All right, I want to close with individual studs and duds. Like I said earlier, there's a pretty clear line here of a couple guys that really struggled and a couple guys that played really well. So we're going to do that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, then you have to try a Built Bar. We're just through almost, I don't know, a couple weeks beyond Valentine's Day now. So I think we're officially past the holidays, getting closer and closer to spring break. I know my goal is still to keep eating healthier this year. I'm doing okay so far. But if you're like me, you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise taste, then I've got just the thing for you. And that is our friends at Built. With Built Bar, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious that you won't even think that they're good for you. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I don't know how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they're healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't even need to wait around to get a box. For years here at Locked On Wolves, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. You can still do that, but now you can also get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. Also, if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with the hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. Again, you can also order at Built.com. Whether you go Built.com, Sam's Club, Walmart, just be sure that you thank me later. Okay, individual studs and duds in this one. Pretty easy calls. We'll start with the studs. Naz Reid, of course, career high 30 points. He had 22 in the first half, 12 of 22 shooting, 4 of 11 outside the arc, both fine numbers. He was just 2 of 5 at the line, so he was a big contributor to the 52%. Austin Rivers, by the way, was 0 of 4. A good game for Naz Reid. 9 rebounds. Would have liked to see, him have 12 or 13 in those 36 minutes. That'd be great, but beggars can't be choosers. On a night where not too many guys played that well individually, Naz was really good. He was a stat stuffer. 30 and 9 plus 5 steals, 3 assists, 2 blocks, only 2 turnovers in those 36 minutes. And of course, he actually had the worst plus minus of anyone in the starting lineup. But there's another example of plus minus being very noisy in a single game for an individual player. This was a good Naz game, make no mistake. He played well. Kevon Looney, the Warriors in general, really struggled to contain him. Early in the game, it was, hey, I'm going to put the ball on the floor and score. Then the Warriors started, kind of trying to play the drive, and he knocked down a couple of threes. Then they started closing out. He had a big poster dunk in the third quarter. Like the Golden State started closing out harder. And then I think towards the end of the game, they realized like, hey, okay, we'd rather not shoot a 3 than get downhill on us against Kevon Looney, right? Looney's a good player, but like Naz is athletic. He's nimble. He's quick, all that stuff, good hands. And it was kind of pick your poison for much of this game, but give Golden State credit. They adjusted in the second half, late in the second half, and he only had 8 second half points in this game and missed a couple open threes late. But overall, a good game for Naz Reid. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I also gets a stud in this game. He was quiet in the second half, but he played well early. The line isn't great, but if you watch this game, he was one of the Wolves' best players on the floor, which I think also says a lot about some of the other struggles they had. But he had 10 points on 4 of 12 shooting, not efficient, 2 of 6 outside the arc, had a couple of ill-advised shots, but he played hard defensively. I thought, by the way, when Jaden McDaniels picked up a second foul early in the game and he hit the bench, they put in Alexander Walker to guard Klay Thompson, had a couple really nice possessions. And then all of a sudden I looked up and Austin Rivers is covering him. And I thought to myself, like, hey, I get it. Rivers is a vet. He's a decent defender, whatever. Alexander Walker should have been guarding Klay Thompson. It should not have been Austin Rivers. And they kind of flipped back and forth a little bit. But I thought Alexander Walker played well, and he deserved to play more late in this game. That was my one quibble with Finch rotation-wise, is that Austin Rivers did not play well, and yet he was on the floor late. It should have been Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I liked what he was doing in this game. He's one of my studs for this game. I'm also going to give one to Kyle Anderson. I thought he played well. It's hard to want more from him. Like, you look at his career scoring numbers, and like, you can't rely on him to be your second or third scorer. But if the Wolves are going to win these games, especially with no Rudy Gobert on the floor, like they did need a little more offense. But given what he typically is able to provide, you'll take 12, 9, and 5 from Kyle Anderson. 12 points on 4 of 8, 9 rebounds, tied for the team lead in rebounds, 5 assists, second on the team in assists, a block. 1 turnover in this game for Kyle Anderson. Was one of only 2 starters to be a positive plus minus in 30 minutes. A good Kyle Anderson game. I mean, he's struggled a little bit lately, but I thought this was a good performance from him. All right, duds in this game. I'm going to, it's tough to give Ant one, but I have to. Like, you can't do it all the time, but Ant struggled in this game. 12 points on 5 of 19 shooting, 2 of 8 on threes, only 1 free throw attempt, and he missed it. 7 assists, which is great. 5 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks, but he also had 5 turnovers. So, I mean, you miss 14 shots, you turn it over 5 times, you only get to the line once, and you miss your only free throw attempts, and you get a dud. I mean, like, Ant, I thought mostly played hard in this game, but you still need more from him. When you come into this game, you know you're the only player that's remotely all-star caliber player on the floor right now, right? Like, you are the guy. No Karl-Anthony Towns, no D'Angelo Russell, no Rudy Gobert. It's all up to you, Ant. And the opposing team's keying in on you. You got to find a way. Like, he barely shot the ball early, and it was great because the Wolves built this big lead. They scored 34 in the first quarter with Ant having 0 points. He didn't score until there were like 5 minutes left in the second quarter. His first couple shots were both threes. Then he finally had a couple in the paint. I think he had 4 points at halftime. But they just, like, Ant had to look for a shot a little more early, which sounds so crazy because then he just kind of kept looking for it the rest of the game, and he never found it. He was a little sloppy with the ball. Defensively, he was spotty. It certainly was not Ant's worst game, but they needed more from him, and given that context, he deserves a dud for this one, in my opinion. Jordan McLaughlin, not a good Jordan McLaughlin game. He's really struggled since coming back from the calf injury after a couple-month layoff. 3 points on 3 shots in 15 minutes. He did knock down a 3, but he missed that corner 3 at the end of the game. He missed his only free throw attempt, which was a technical attempt. Which, by the way, the Golden State PA announcer talked when McLaughlin was in the middle of his shot. Finch even complained about it when it happened. Like, you're not supposed to do that. They didn't let him reshoot it. Whatever. 3 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers for McLaughlin. The 2 turnovers were unsightly. They were both bad turnovers. They're not typical McLaughlin. He didn't get any steals in this game. He wasn't able to balance those out at all like we've typically seen him, try and do. Just not good stints. Bad first stint, bad second stint. He was on the floor a lot late as the Wolves were trying to get those steals and play solid defense down the stretch, but just a disappointing game for McLaughlin. This game is so frustrating. I'm going to go with the third dud, and that's Austin Rivers. He was bad in this game. 6 points on 8 shots, 2 of 8 shooting, 2 of 5 outside the arc, missed all 4 of his free throw attempts. 1 rebound in 21 minutes. No other counting stats. No assists, no steals, no blocks. 2 of 8 shooting, 0 of 4 at the line, 1 rebound in 21 minutes, and minus 14. No other Timberwolf was worse than a minus 6 in this game. Austin Rivers was a minus 14, and again, I scratched my head as to why he was on the floor late, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker was not. So not a good Austin Rivers game. Okay, that's all for this one. On Tuesday's show, so the Wolves play Tuesday, and then they don't play again until Friday. So Tuesday, we'll, of course, preview the Wolves-Clippers game. It's a late TNT game on Tuesday night, so we'll talk about that on Tuesday's show. I also want to break down the weekend as a whole, some of the bigger issues. There's a bit of some national chatter out there related to Jaden McDaniels' defense, Naz Reid's pending free agency, so we'll do some of that stuff. We'll talk about Charlotte, the game Friday. I didn't do a full post-game pod. We did the live postcast with Marnie, so that's out there. If you missed it, it's actually the episode before this one. 2 before this one, I guess, because we did the Sunday postcast too. But I want to kind of take the weekend as a whole, the Charlotte game, the Golden State game, those takeaways. So that'll be Tuesday. It'll be a full show. And then, of course, Wednesday will be Tuesday's post-game pod. TBD what Thursday's show will be all about, but then Friday we'll get you ready for the Friday night game as well. So the Wolves are off Wednesday and Thursday after the Tuesday game against the Clippers. So a big thank you to those of you that do make Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. It's greatly appreciated. Of course, you can watch the show on YouTube. You can also listen on your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you listen, you can find this show. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Now make your second listen the Game to Game NBA podcast every moment, every top performance, and every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.